My name is Audra. I live in Egg Harbor Township. I'm 36 years old. I have a husband whose name is Anthony, and I have a daughter who's 5 years old. Her name is Ramona, and I'm here with you to share my story of how I found Jesus. I want to start by sharing my background of how I was raised. My mom was Catholic and is still Catholic, and my father is Jewish. And when I was born, my parents converted me to Judaism. And so I lived in a home where I was raised going to synagogue, but also going to church. We celebrated all the holidays growing up, and also I went to Sunday school, where I learned all the stories of the Old Testament. I always was curious where my relationship with God was. In school, in Hebrew school at the synagogue that I attended, we would always learn about the stories of Noah and Moses and other stories like that. And as relatable as they were in the way that they were taught, God always felt somewhat far away. In my yearning to see what else was out there, I would be with my mom at church, and though being raised Jewish, there was always that separation. With the distance that I felt, though kind of just going through the motion, being raised, though very in a faithful home where God was always present, there was always this yearning, this desire to know God in a way that I didn't know how. When I turned 11, I started figuring out with my rabbi when I was going to have bat mitzvah. Through that experience, I kind of relied on the study of learning to read Hebrew and learn about the Torah and get a Torah portion and really rely on my Jewish roots to facilitate the direction of seeking God in a way that I, at that point, couldn't find him. It still did not fill this void, and it makes complete sense now, but remembering the Audra that was 12 years old, I couldn't articulate it. I just thought that, okay, to believe in God is to know God. I went through my teenage years just believing in God, knowing that God existed, and hoping that one day I would have a deeper relationship with God. And so fast forward to when I turned 19 years old, when I met my now husband. The one evening he was on his way home from work, and he called me, and what felt like out of nowhere, but now very purposefully, I now know why. He called me and he told me that he thought that I should get baptized. But when he told me, it kind of caught me off guard, and I asked him why, and he told me because God thought that would help me seek the faith that I desire. I appreciate it, and I thanked him, and though I couldn't connect to that at that point in my life. What I now know is that when Anthony told me that, he moved me into what I call as the next stage of my relationship with God, because never in my life before that moment did I know, not only do I get to believe in God, but I get to be with God. I get to speak with God. And so that seed was planted very distinctly at that moment. And it wasn't an overnight thing, but it was definitely a seed of curiosity and wonder around what could be out there for me to know. So when I was 28, my husband and I moved to Colorado. Pretty soon after moving out there, I wanted to move back home. And though we were starting to get our roots there, our work there, after we had Ramona, there was this sense of loneliness and craving and desiring to be back with our community, with our family and friends here. We moved back to New Jersey, January of 2022, so a little over a year ago. We got back, and Hallie Martinez, who has been one of the closest, if not the closest, friends of my lifetime, in the way that she graces with her love and her presence in my life for over the last 15 years, which I met her through my husband. Coming back, Hallie invited me to go to Selah this past summer. And so from that experience at Selah, I started asking a lot of questions. I asked questions to my mom. I asked questions to Hallie, those two specifically. It was as though God reached out his hand and said, I want to introduce you to someone. and that someone was Jesus, and very much that's how it felt. It was though this fall, God introduced me to Jesus. Everything that I believed in as a child, as a Jewish girl, believing in all the stories of the Old Testament was fulfilled by meeting Jesus, my Savior, as though the story got to be complete now. So in the fall, I had many questions. What were man-made beliefs and what were God beliefs? I'll never forget the one day I was just walking through my house into the kitchen and wondering, like, why now, God? Why now? Why are you introducing me to Jesus now? And he so distinctly said, you needed to know who I was, and so you know now who I am. And so then it just became this turning of no longer searching or seeking, but learning how to be with him now. Learning to, with new ears and new eyes, and really rest in grace. It was the first Monday after the 21 days of prayer, and I was with Hallie, and we were talking with you after, and you were like, so do you proclaim that Jesus is your Lord and Savior? And that was such a trigger for me, even though I knew he was at that point, but the boldness of that statement, which I now am like, thank you. Like, I needed to be triggered. I needed to be there to like really grapple with like, whoa. Because that sounded like a really big statement. That felt like a very like, what do you mean, my Lord and Savior? Right, because I grew up learning fairy tales of kings and kingdoms, and I remember talking to Hal and like, I really like Pastor Rich, and that triggered me. And I remember later on, a few weeks later, being like, I really needed that. I really needed that push to question myself. I've shared the news with my parents. I've shared the news with my brother and obviously my husband and my daughter. And I knew that the next step would be to make a public declaration to the world. In February, my husband Anthony and I met with Pastor Rich and Misty for lunch, and I didn't want to wait. I wanted to get baptized as soon as possible. So in the middle of March, I got baptized at North Street Beach in Ocean City, where the church community, the church family gathered, and my family gathered, and friends gathered, and I got baptized. It was the magnificence of declaring and knowing that the good news is for all who have the ears to listen and the eyes to see, to be used in the way of freeing the hearts and souls of the people that I commune here with on planet Earth. And so it's been an honor to be a part of this community and to know that we're just getting started. And every blessing that I've ever been given, that was God's hand, that was God's grace. And to be here now, like, I owe my life to God. To choose God every morning and every night and every moment in between to serve him fills every desire I could ever imagine. To articulate the magnitude of being a human in this body, though there's this soul that is from heaven and has been put on this earth to share the good news of God, there's nothing else more fulfilling than that. By no means do I not hold the burdens of being a human, but to live in the presence of peace with Jesus is something that I have no words for, as the embodiment of Christ lives now within me, and it is quite literally everything.